lunch and the breakfast session. So we will not bore you for sure. That is assurance from all of us. We will come up with proper experience sharing. My name is Ajit Jangle. I'm Managing Director for FM Logistics. And this topic is very close to everybody's heart here because we cannot live without the automation, robotics, and the whole optimization of the supply chain to integrate and create a value for our customers. So what I will request to all the speakers to introduce themselves and open this session with their thoughts for maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and that will keep the panel discussion.
Hi, I'm Satish Karnakaran. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? My name is Satish Karnakaran. I am Director of Transformation for Pepe Jeans India. Pepe Jeans is a Spain-based company. The brand is London-based, but the company is based in Spain. And it has been in India for almost 45 years right now. So it's a long cultural association. Most people recognize the brand. It is the second largest denim brand in India right now. So that's about the company. Now, coming on to my background, I started my career as an engineer with ABB, worked there for a short while, then moved on to do an MBA, and then worked with Titan in supply chain and sales for some period of time. And then Aditya Birla Fashion Retail, at that time they were called Madura Garments, I worked there. And a number of consumer and apparel related, fashion related companies. I also had a 5-year stint with Infosys in the US, looking after Infosys consulting business for a part of the US. There I learned a completely different set of parameters on which supply chain is operating. That was a very interesting and very useful learning experience for me. Then afterwards, I worked with a company called Fonterra. It's a dairy company based in New Zealand for about 6 years. And for the last 3-4 years, I have worked with Pepe. So my background has been supply chain and technology, technology implementation in supply chain. That's been my whole background. I have about 33 years of work experience. In this specific topic, I find this one of the most exciting things that is happening right now. All the improvements that you can gain by process re-engineering, by doing certain work reallocation, different type of layout planning, etc. I think most of it has been squeezed out in most locations. We have already done many rounds of productivity improvement using SOP improvement, process improvement, etc. Now, the next wave that is now hitting us is the technology-related improvements. There are 2 types in my mind. There are 2 types to it. One is the process improvement type technology, like for example, a sorter instead of people actually manually sorting things, or a conveyor to make the product go from one place to the other, or robotic intervention to bring the product closer to this. So that's one stream of improvements that can be got. The other one is with data. Whatever data that you generate through your operations, how can you learn from it and how can you make your operations go even better? I think these are 2 elements that I see as promising. As we go through the process, I would be very happy to contribute some of my own experiences in that. Thanks.
Yeah. Hello. Good afternoon and close to good evening to everyone. Yeah. So as my colleague Ajit said that we will not let you get bored. Yeah. And I will also try to kind of make sure that, you guys are not, bored and sleeping, etc., etc. So just to give you a very quick introduction, my name is Srinivas. I work for currently Sun Pharmaceutical, but out of college, I worked for Unilever and then Reckitt for about 25 years in the consumer goods industry. And then for the last about 7 odd years, I've been working with Sun Pharma. That's a very quick background of myself. By the way, I'm an engineer. And way back in 1990, I had some fascination for doing something in robotics. And I went ahead and did my master's in robotics and automation back then. And the only university which was offering was IIT Kanpur. I said, okay, let's go there and actually try to kind of do something. After I satiated my need for doing something on robotics automation, went back to work for Unilever. People would ask me, "Tum Unilever mein kya kar rahe ho robotics karke? Sabun bana rahe ho?" I said, "Of course, yes. How does it matter?" But, you know, honestly, over a period of my last 32 odd years of career, I have seen the biggest impact which we bring is, there are two types of impacts which we bring. One is incremental small improvements, and the other is actually a discontinuous improvement. When I talk of a discontinuous improvement, that has to be led by an innovation, by a technology. For people who are, let's say, my lineage here, 25, 30 years ago, who went to the college, industrial engineering used to be a very important part of the study, the time study, the clocks, this, that, and the whole 9 yards. In today's world, people don't even talk of that. Yeah. So to cut a long story short, automation and robotics is something which has been very close to me ever since I was a student. And I have actually had experiences of implementing a real robo, RPA kind of a robo, and digitization and the whole 9 yards in the last 30 odd years. And we will talk about some of our experiences as we keep going along. And we have a panelist from IBM who will share his experiences with respect to what could be done in a digital world. Yeah. So between the two, the incremental improvements and a discontinuous improvement, the discontinuous improvement will bring a huge change. And that is perhaps the topic of discussion which we are talking of here today, in terms of how can, let's say, a robotics and an automation bring a discontinuous improvement in logistics and in supply chain and in planning, etc., etc. So that's a very quick introduction about myself and my initial thoughts on automation and robotics. We'll come back, later on.
Thanks, Sri. KK?
Thank you so much, Sriniji. I'm really privileged and happy to share with you guys such a wonderful experience, rich experience. And as Mr. Srini promised, that we will not make you bored and make it more practical, real-life scenarios rather than giving a theory gyan knowledge. And my name is Krishna Kumar Singh, but my colleagues and friends there, I'm known more as KK Singh. A few of them you know me already. So I'm currently working with the Hafele India, which is a German company, as a regional director, which is a South Asia head for supply chain. Before that, I was with Bosch Group, which is BSS, Bosch Siemens Home Appliances, for 12 years. And before, then Philips, Electrolux, Reliance, Onida, and all those things. So almost 27 years in supply chain throughout my career, and almost all the time, either in home appliances or electronics or mobile or telecom industry. So this really a great experience and journey has been. My colleagues talk about the automation and robotic, and I'm really excited to talk about a little bit and learn about AI and ML role in supply chain, because this is the crucial and most talked about topic. And I'm really looking forward to learn, exchange, and build a networking with all you guys, and looking forward to have a really interactive session with you all. Thank you.
Thanks, KK. Over to you, Harshad.
Yeah. Hello, good afternoon. Thanks, KK. Myself, Harshad Bhatt. I'm working as a logistics, responsible for logistics in one of the German company. It's a company since India last 30 years, and looking after logistics, supply chain things. Basically, I'm an engineer. I have started my working on floor shop, basically, in a forging shop company. So where I have worked in night shift as well. So it is an experience which everybody should take it, so that it's right from scratch till now. I've worked in different companies on different roles. Yeah, and for this particular topic, today's topic, that is automation, backbone of technology for automation. From my point of view, I think it should be categorized into three parts. One is system, second is hardware, and third is the technology. Because if system is there and then hardware is also, collaborated together with that, then the last part, which is actually the major part, is technology, and which is a buzzword nowadays, is AI or machine learning language. So these things will definitely helpful for improving the productivity, efficiency, and overall company's situation. So these are thoughts from my side, and definitely I'm looking forward to share the ideas which I have and share the thoughts with my colleagues here. And of course, we will make this session much more interesting with real ground related examples. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Harshal.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Venkatesh Kumar, and I am founder and CEO of a startup called Stackbox. Stackbox is primarily a supply chain software service provider. We work in the space of order fulfillment, which is order, transportation, and warehousing. So that's the area that we work. We work with many consumer products companies, pharma companies, or any product companies, primarily optimizing this entire chain. The backbone is technology, and the way we look at the technology is the brain of the entire logistics. Whereas logistics, the hard part of that is like legs and arms, whereas the software is the brain for you. We don't have enough time, so I'll just share a very quick story of impact of technology and how we built our company in a way. So what technology can do in such a short time. So just a very quick story of a consumer products company in India who were our first customer, where we started our journey. And the task was to add 1 million, it's a consumer products company, so they serve to retail outlets, and the task was to add 1 million additional outlets without adding any cost, which means like you are cutting the entire supply chain cost, but still adding 1 million outlets, and you have to go there to service. And this entire task, primarily the task started with geotagging the entire outlets, all the outlets in the country. And geotagging appears very simple, but imagine you have 5,000 sales reps going to the market and concurrently doing geotags. Many of the outlets are there, not there, ghost outlets, and so many other challenges. And it was only technology that could make it possible to do that in such a short time, across the country. Just imagine the length and breadth of the India and the challenges and the kind of markets that you have. Post the geotagging, the whole idea was to optimize the last mile logistics. In the last mile logistics, if you just think of the impact, you have 3,000 roughly at that time delivery vans which we were delivering to these retail outlets. We had about 7,000 sales reps which were going out to the market. And you have about 700 odd locations where this has to be implemented in 4 or 5 months, right? And we were a team of just 5 people then. So we were initially 2 people, and then we saw that the scope is going to get bigger, and we were just 5 people team, which was able to do this entire implementation in just in a scope of just in a time frame of just about 5 months. And if I look back, it is simply the task seems very difficult. We were able to take 400 vehicles, last mile vehicles, off the road. So, it's like a tremendous success, this program, and that's where the money came from to add the additional outlets. This whole program, if I look back how each of the steps were done, it's primarily the tech stack which was powering this. Tech stack which was even helping us multiply. So, for example, we didn't have the time or the resources to go to each of the locations to do this deployment. But the whole idea was that how technology can do this and empower the people at multiple levels. So it's not about just the planning or execution, but also to empower, train people to do this deployment is something that we were able to achieve. So yeah, so this is a simple, from the impact perspective, you can see that what technology can do. Very small team can do very large size value creation in a very, very short time. So we look forward to the subsequent discussion and then questions from you guys to take it forward.
Thanks, Venki. So Mahidhar, I'll request you to present and introduce also.
Hello, am I audible?
Not really.
Let me take the mic.
Yeah.
Is this better?
Yeah. Much better.
So,
You can off that. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
So I am Mahidhar. I basically lead the supply chain practice in IBM. So I come from an engineering background, did my MBA from IIM Bangalore, and I've been with IBM since, predominantly working in the area of supply chain planning and optimization. I think what Satish was saying a bit earlier, I completely concur with him when he said that the days of process improvements have seen their day, right? So those days are done. I think all the companies have gone through their head as trying to see what is the best practices. I think these are something which are right now readily available. I think the next wave of transformation is truly in terms of digital and how we can use data and the various advanced algorithms in order to try and truly improve this entire planning process. So I'll be talking about few of those instances today. And I think the presentation today is in terms of how we can leverage some of the advanced technologies in terms of automating this entire process. I think typically when you see, when you essentially see some of the supply chain practices, right, I think technology in supply chain is not really new, right? I think we have been fundamentally using technology since the time. Hello? Yeah, this is much better. So fundamentally, technology has been there in supply chain because that way supply chain is one of the domains in the entire business planning activities, which has been sufficiently blessed with rich and structured data given the ERP evaluations and various other aspects. But I think eventually what has happened is we have had major of your supply chain planning technologies which have been focused on improving your planning and execution efficiencies, right? They are all limited to their own individual functions. And I think it was not a cross-functional enablement, which is really what is being seen out there. And what really shook that was essentially what happened with COVID, right? In the aftermath of COVID, what I essentially saw was there are two important aspects which was clearly seen. One, the entire disruption can happen to even a very really laid out plan. Second one is a disruption in one part of your domain. It could be your raw material planning, it could be your production planning, can completely impact your execution which is happening in any other domain of your entire supply chain planning. It could be in the sales area as well, right? Now, how do you then respond, right? When you have your planning technologies and everything enabled in their own individual silos, how do you respond to these kind of disruptions? And I know, I mean, people might say that, okay, COVID is a once in a kind of instance which has happened maybe only one time in 2019 and we are not aware about what has happened earlier before that. But over the last 4 years, right, typically when you see your post-COVID era, which is these 4 years, you have seen that there are multiple disruptions which have already happened. For example, there has been a palm oil shortage in the year of 21 or 22. There has been this entire Suez Canal blockage which was happening. Then there's a global chip shortage, API shortages, and various other factors. And this has been done in a span of 4 years, right? These are various external disruptions which we are talking about. Now there are a lot of internal disruptions also which keep happening. For example, your sales would have happened higher than your plan, right? Your plant manufacturing location which you would have planned a certain amount of capacity would have broken down. Your truck which is supposed to be there would have not been available. And various other aspects, right? So your suppliers would have had challenges. So these are various internal disruptions which are happening. In fact, I think there was recently a study which essentially looked at what is the average time gap between any major supply chain disruption which is happening. And actually one of the results is it is come down to 2.5 to 3 years. So every 2.5 to 3 years, we are actually having some or the other major supply chain disruption which is happening, which is impacting your significant EBITDA that the company is making. And the prediction is that this gap is going to come down further. Now, how do we improve from there, right? I think that's where people started talking about, I think all of you would have heard about China plus one, right? That is where they wanted the resiliency to come out. Earlier, the key focus predominantly was in terms of cost efficiency. Am I going to improve my cost? How efficiently am I doing my activities? What is the efficiency of my processing? What is the per cost unit and all of this? I think when these disruptions started becoming public and more, more disruptive, I think people then started saying, how fast can I get my supply chain on track? right? And then that's where this resiliency has become a very important factor. Now, for us to get this resiliency on track, it is very, very important for us to ensure that the cross-collaboration and cross-functional enablement of supply chain planning or automation of the supply chain planning is there. And that is what is giving birth to a concept called as control tower operations. Now, historically, we would have heard about control towers. Supply chain control towers typically were the dashboards wherein you would have a certain amount of KPIs, there were some disruptions which are happening, but unfortunately it was restricted to that. I think what I'll do is maybe I'll try to show you a really true flavor of what a control tower is supposed to do. Then we'll look at potentially how the tech stack can be, or what is the kind of tech stack that is required for doing that. Let us take this particular scenario. I think, hope my laser is there on the screen. Let's say the supply planner on the morning is given an information from the system saying that either there is a stockout which would have happened or there is an anticipated stockout. So you can essentially use your various analytical algorithms also to try and say, is there going to be a potential stockout? Now, what was earlier being seen in a silo can now be linked to the subsequent part, because for him to take any decision, it also needs to be understood what has caused this particular disruption that we are talking about, or whatever has caused this exception or alerts that has talking about. Now this, the system is able to give him or throw to him what is the root cause analysis that has that has resulted in this entire disruption that has happened. Is it supplier side issue? Is it excess demand that is being observed in the market than what is being planned? So on and so forth, so that your recommendation then is aligned accordingly. Then you have various optimizations engines or recommendation engines which is looking at what are the available options and then trying to recommend what is the best available options to him. Now, you might always argue saying that this is something which we also do manually, right? What is so great about looking at this in an orchestrated manner? All that you're doing is a sequence of steps. But unfortunately, till now, I think till the entire custom as a control tower as a topic has evolved, we have never been able to put them or plug them as an individual steps. All that people have been doing is taking data from output, analyzing it, putting it into some other system or a silo, and then trying to see what is that particular output. And why is that a manual person cannot do this individually, right? Now the global supply chains, right, or the supply chain systems have evolved to a greater extent. Like for example, in the search for efficiency and the globalization that we are looking at, none of any of the existing supply chains are local anymore. None of them are restricted to India as a country or India as a base of operations. All of them have globally become, or essentially all of them have truly become global supply chain operations. Now when you look at a global supply chain operations, your combinations in terms of what should be your recommendation becomes into million. For example, if I take a typical FMCG client, right, with about 30 to 40 or 50 different manufacturing units, there are CFAs around 30 to 40 different CFAs which are the sale points, and selling about 400 to 500 different SKUs. The combination of these itself will run into lakhs. And for a person, other than the monthly planning which is happening, for a person on a daily level to try and understand what is the disruption, what is the source of disruption, and what is the recommendation for a disruption across multiple combinations which would have happened is truly a humongous task. That's where I think control towers will step in, because historically we have been limited to only using most of these planning functions. You would be aware of all the major planning solutions which are there in the market, right? But more or less they have been restricted to your monthly planning or a fortnightly planning or a 10-day bucket planning, typically depending upon the organization. We have never really brought them into day-to-day level execution, trying to understand how these can be orchestrated into a single volume flow in order to ensure your day-to-day level execution challenges which are coming in can also be solved, in fact, in a faster manner and in a more efficient manner, in such a way that it can be given as a recommendation to the planner for him to execute. And that's where I think, like I was calling out this orchestration layer in terms of a supply chain control tower fits in. It is not a replacement of your existing planning solutions. Your existing planning solutions is at your higher granularity level. But what we talk about as a supply chain control tower is predominantly from your execution point of view. How can I ensure a smoother execution? And in case if there is any disruption in the execution, how can I use some of my advanced analytical models or algorithms in order to ensure that it is able to provide me with a quick response in a matter of minutes for me to execute. And that's where most of your supply chain control tower orchestrations sit on top of your existing ERP solutions from which they're able to pick up the data, sit on top of your existing planning solutions from where they're able to use some of the executing planning models or various analytical models, and then execute. Now, typically there are 3 or 4 different types of components which needs to be important or enabled within a supply chain control tower. One is in terms of providing the visibility. In the example that we are discussing, we are looking at how an alert or a notification system is coming to the planner in order to try and understand what is the exception that has happened. The second one is essentially in terms of root cause analysis, right? To try and understand what is the root cause that has potentially resulted in this particular exception. The third one is in terms of recommendation systems, the necessary AML or their optimization models that can be built in order to ensure that the planner is able to get a perspective in terms of what needs to be done. And finally, you have execution automation systems. These are the 4 or 5 components or the most important components within any supply chain control tower. Now, what does it mean by the planner, right? I think we have been talking about concept for quite some time, and I think being true to the word of what Ajit was asking us not to be boring, I think it is also important for us to understand what does it impact the planner who is using it, right? I think fundamentally from being there to try and run the entire supply chain by himself, to try and ensure every SKU depot combination or every SKU plant combinations, the execution is happening smoothly. The transformation will happen from him to start using that to convert it into an exception by management. So I am not going to intervene where all my regular plan, supply chain plan is is following smoothly. I am going to intervene only where there are exceptions and take the necessary and immediate actions. That's where the resiliency in the supply chain will come out in terms of being robust, strong, or flexible in terms of addressing any of the disruptions. So that's what I thought maybe I'll bring to your notice in terms of some of the latest evolvements that are happening in the area of supply chain in order to truly tackle the disruptions which are happening in the market. Thank you.
Thanks, Mahidhar. I think you opened up a lot of points for the further discussion, and I'll pick one point which you mentioned about the control tower. In FM logistics, although we have a 60 lakh square feet of warehouses and we manage with 750 vehicles every day without having a single vehicle. And that is only because of setting up the whole control tower. And we are taking a pride that we are the only company in logistics who has a really sophisticated control tower, where it is not about the lagging indicator ki gaadi kahan pahunchi aur kahan pahunchna hai. I think it is about the leading indicators to communicate with the customers and then communicating and telling them that this is a plan B and you can change your production plan accordingly so that there is no hindrance in your production plan. So I think now this is a good discussion because for last 20 years we are having a discussion ki automation is required or not required. I think we have a very eminent planner here that where 4 of the customers and 3 service providers, every may have a different views. But I think important point here is that everybody wants to have this, but there is a cost attached to it. And then when we come up with the business case and go to the boardroom, they ask 5 questions and normally the business case fail because there is no payback period or we cannot able to communicate that what we'll get because some of the things are intangible, very, very challenging to communicate unless you have a long-term perspective and the progressive management. So I like to understand from panel that how you convince your management, come up with the proposal, what is the payback period, how you manage to get ROI from your investment, which may be area of automation, digitization, robotics, because this is one area which is everybody wants that, I want it, but then labor cost is not that high the way we have in the international market, and then everything goes down saying that, okay, we'll try maybe next year. So how you tackle this in your organization?
Thanks, Ajit. I think it's a very relevant and very difficult to answer question. And all of us, all the people sitting here from the supply chain profession, hear the dreaded words of return on investment, right? When you go with anything, the CFO will open up and say, ROI, how much? I need 17% ROI. So the issue, the way I had in my career at one point of time when I was working with Infosys Consulting, we had a client who had the same problem. They had done quite a lot of cost cutting initiatives in the warehouse, but that would only yield about 1 or 2%, 3% cost benefit. So the ROI was very good because there was no investment. It was only cutting manpower or doing some process automation, very simplistic process automation, etc. So they approached us with saying that, look, we want to do something breathtakingly different, which will increase our efficiency by, say, 30, 40%, and allow us to service more stores. So this was in the US. They had 50 distributors across 50 states, and the warehouses are located in 4 locations, 4 plants. So all of that, the complexity of all of that. So one thing that we did as a consultant in that was that we basically created a system, like a model, almost a mathematical model of what it will take to cut or improve the productivity by 30 to 40%. And what are the things that are handling there? So one of the things interesting measures that we came up with is, in an average day, a picker works 7.5 miles in the process of picking. 7.5 miles is a lot, I know. And so that is one striking example we provided. We also provided the situation of, in a day, there are almost 450 misshipments that will go out of the door. So those kind of numbers were, basically to give an understanding of what are we missing in terms of opportunity. Cost of the warehouse is probably 4, 5, 6% of the gross sale cost. But if you can do something that the warehouse is currently not capable of doing, like, for example, shipping out faster, reaching the customer faster, etc., that would more than compensate for whatever efficiency difference that you are currently seeing. So that's another message we drove. So moving from a warehouse with, if you've seen any of the warehouses, only about 50% of the space is actually used for product storage. Most of it is just aisles and walkways and all kinds of other, non-productive space. So how do we reduce the non-productive space was the question we asked. So the net result of that, eventually we figured out that by moving to a very high density storage location based thing, we should be able to provide with roughly about half the space that they currently had, they would be able to ship about 125% more than what they were shipping on a per day basis. And also plus the number of people required to run such warehouses are smaller. So to that extent, the manpower cost also comes down. So with that as a financial model and a mathematical model, we started discussions on how we'll go about doing it. The process went on for quite some time, but eventually what really convinced the board to sign off on this is the business benefit of faster shipments. If I place an order in the morning, by 5 o'clock in the evening, the order would have left the warehouse. And that's about 2 or 3 days that they save in the process of that. And in the peak season, for example, you can add more robots and be able to run more shipments out of the door rather than be constrained by the manpower and the training of the new manpower and the mistakes and the errors, etc. So a lot of those factors went into convincing the management. But this is something that the board has to take a slightly longer view. There will be no exact mathematical value that you can allocate to a faster shipment. You cannot put an exact number to it. You can always debate that number. But once they did that, I think over the next 2 or 3 years, they continuously realized that there were multiple opportunities to even further reduce the footprint of the warehouse, improve the speed of velocity of order shipment through the warehouse, etc. So, it's not always possible to mathematically calculate the ROI, but it's also about us as supply chain professionals being able to present the business case where there are solid mathematical financial benefits as well as there are additional benefits which are difficult to quantify but are equally important for the growth of the business in the future.
Thanks, Satish. I think
So that's-
what I picked from Satish is that try to be on the revenue side of the table instead of having the cost side of the table. Because when you talk about the cost reduction has a limitation and the time frame, But when you talk about the revenue side, it has a long-term implication and very easy possibly to convince the board that maybe with this particular automation or robotic or maybe some change in the process, which may cost maybe the $100 today, but maybe in the long run we'll get $500. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I was about to build on the same story that, all of us are supply chain professionals here. And so there is a very key differentiation between what is a support function and what is an enabling function. Okay. Now, a lot of us tend to kind of believe that we are a support function, which means जब तक चल रहा है बढ़िया है, जब नहीं चल रहा है तभी डंडा लगता है. Please get out of that mode. That is the first thing which I would like to say. Supply chain is actually not a support function, it is an enabling function. What is the difference between the two? I'm not trying to play with words of English here. Let me explain to you what I mean by a support function and what I mean by an enabling function. You take, let's say, a regulatory or let's say a legal, where if there is no nuisance, that's okay.
It's a good news.
Yeah, that's okay. But if there is news, then that is bad news. Supply chain is not that anymore. It used to be like that long ago, but it's not that anymore. Why do I say that? Which is exactly what Satish said and what Ajit also, spoke about. That improvement in a service level is actually enabling the growth of the company, the top line of the company. Okay. Now, what do you say? You mean to say that if your sufficiency levels, if your service levels are, let's say, 90%, if you bring it to, let's say, a 95%, will that mean that there will be growth in the company? Of course, yes. Now, that's the conviction which we need to have. There are studies which are umpteen number of them which have been done, that every 4% improvement in OTIF actually increases 1% of revenue for the whole company. Yeah? And that is the conviction with which we should actually go to the boardrooms. And I am a part of the boardroom, and when people come to me that, I like it that way that, your creation of an ROI which you're talking about is so much more easier. Let me give you a very live example of something which I am doing at our company in Sun as we speak. Yeah? And Mahi, you will actually kind of perhaps relate to it a little bit more. We've been working on APO for a long time now, about 15 years odd. And we want to retire the APO function. And I've been pushing my team to actually come back with ROI, because we've got, let's say, around 35 odd factories where we want to implement APO and about 4 or 5, 6 business regions across the globe. Now, people were struggling to find what should be the ROI on that. Yeah, I said in an APO, it does not give you a holistic end-to-end picture. In any advanced planning solution, whether it's an IBP or whether it's a, let's say, Kinaxis or any of those 09 solutions, will give you an end-to-end what-if solutions, etc., etc. So what? These are nice to have. I'm saying no, these are not nice to have. What are the impacts which it can do in terms of the business? They can bring down your inventories, they can bring down your penalties to supply, they can do all these things. So when my team started creating an ROI, which is exactly what you said, they were so surprised that they came back and said, listen, Srini, the ROI is coming to less than a year. Yeah. Now, it's about exactly what Ajit said a while ago. What is it? There is cost reduction and then there is revenue increase. Now, if you look at, in many of them, cost reduction will give you a lot of ROI. But if you're not able to find a cost reduction ROI, go to the revenue increase. A classic case, for example, postal services. And about till 20 years ago, there were no automatic sorters which were there. Yeah. But about 20 years ago, people started talking about automatic sorters and whether it is required or not required. Yeah. Similarly, check clearances in the bank. Yeah. Without an MICR, no checks are agreed. I mean, no checks are taken for the last maybe what, 20 odd years, 15 years at least. Yeah. So these are all processes of automation and they are required. Today, how many of you actually go to bank for doing a transaction? Can I have a raise of hand? Hardly. Yeah. I haven't been to a branch of a bank even for opening the account. So that is the level of automation which we are actually talking about. And ROI actually comes back to us. It's only whether you want to look at, that ROI from the left side or the right side. The left side being the cost, right side being the revenue. That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think we are echoing all our views. And I'll move to KK from the customer, which is hardcore product.
So I think most my colleagues already touched on most of the topics, but for me, this has been always fascinating to go and convince the board, I want one fancy IT tool. They said, okay, you want a tool, but what is the ROI? Always as usual. So for me, it's very easy to convince is that what is more important for any organization? Cash flow, inventory, and the headcount, right? So if you have a tool, my colleagues talked about the control tower where you have a visibility and if you can free up your inventory, which increase your cash flow. So likewise in previous company, we introduced a control tower in which we had around 3.5 months coverage, or 3.8 months coverage precisely. And from there we bring down to 1.6 month coverage because of implementing control tower where we have end-to-end visibility. So that means we free up 2 months coverage inventory, which is of that time 200 crore into 400 crore worth of cash flow. That's one. Second, many a times we have an inventory, but we do not have inventory which sales want, which is maybe 5 to 6%. But they will talk about that only. They will never talk about 92% inventory which is lying in the world, they will never talk about. But they will talk about the 6 to 8% inventory which is not there, right?
Sometimes I'm worried whether they really want to have sales or they want to create a reason for not having sales.
Exactly, yeah. So most of the time topic is on 6 and 8%, not 92%. But this system allows you to really see the opportunity loss because this is the logic you can sell to your management. 6% business or sometimes this 6% or 8%, we do 6 and 8%, but this has a combination with some other product. If I do not have this, can I sell this? No. Sometimes this goes as a bundle. Right? So I do agree, if you have your 8% products are not there, this may lead to a 20% business loss. So business loss is a cost saving, right? Other pain area for any organization is your absolute stock or slow mover. If you have a tool in which you give a pre-alert, hey, now if you do not sell this, this is crossing a year or 6 months or 8 years, 2 years, and this will become slow movers and then absolute stock, then you raise an alarm. And there, avoid the depreciation. And then you go in the market, either you find out the good scheme or discount and liquidate and free up the cash flow, free up the warehouse space, right? The fourth argument for me, if I have a nice tool, I can, maybe I will not hire my headcount for next 2 years because I don't need data punching officer. I do not need business analyst or data analyst. And this tool will give me all this enabler. I don't need this. So these are the major costs. I would say not cost, but enabler for which you can easily convince with the facts and figures. So for me, this has been quite easy. But if you talk about the facts and figures.
Sure. I think Sri has given one word which is enabler, which is really good. Yeah. I think it is a very different than the support function and enabler function. Yeah. Because so far, I was thinking the both are same, but it is not. So you really pointed out very nicely that enabler is a different function. And then KK is mentioning about the loss of sale. I think the loss of sale, sometimes we lose a margin, but more than margin, we lose the market share. Because the current challenge that somebody, let's say, wants to have maybe ABC product, he or she has several options. When your product is preferred, but not available on a shelf, and goes to another, maybe the whole loyalty shifting, and then that person may not come to you maybe for next 3 years also. And then you spend a lot of time in marketing to attract that person again. So it is not about the just margin, what we lose from the loss of sale, but a lot of cascading effect about losing the customer itself. You want to say something?
Yeah. No, I was reminded about him saying that, a fancy tool. Now I was reminded of an anecdote. About 30 years ago in 1995, I used to work in a remote place called Kamgaon, which is like near Akola from here. And those were not the days of the mobile phones. And we had these intercoms in our factory, and I was an engineering manager. So very recently, there was this launch of what is called as a pager. The youngsters would not know what, we used to put that here. So I raised a capital expenditure form for about 5 lakh rupees, I still remember, and sent it across to my head office here, to the head of engineering. So he approves that, but actually with a comment saying that nowadays now you need fancy ornaments to wear in the factory. So when you said a fancy tool, yeah, I know. But you know, coming to, you know, the speed of operation and everything, I also feel, you know, today it's about instant gratification. We tend to kind of change our iOS, change our telephones, change our, you know, computers, change our iPads and everything every 3 years, 4 years, because we want it to be fast. Yeah. And people want it fast, you know, 10-minute delivery and all these things are happening in this world. If we don't live up to those expectations, then we'll be very soon out of the business. And this is also another perspective we need to give into the management rooms, yeah?
Thanks. So, Harshan, I think we have a lot of talkative panels, so I think it's going to and fro, which is very good.
Yes. So ROI. I mean, I'm bringing everybody again to the ground. ROI. So it's about on the cost side or it's about the revenue side. But from my point of view, I will give you one particular example. Very, very basic example. It's very small example in which what I have. What I have considered as the head count, because productivity improvement is the motto, and whatever cost we are spending by maybe employing those persons for doing that task, if I can reduce that and I can make that process error-free with some kind of automation. So I will just give you that example. In my company, what we do is we deliver our goods on credit basis to customers, and while delivering the goods, our transporter needs to get the proof of delivery, that is the acknowledgement. So based on that acknowledgement, then the sales colleagues go after that particular days to collect the payment. Now, if that payment has to be secured from customer, sometimes, I mean, I'm not saying every customer, some customer says, okay, can you show me when I received the goods? So then that POD has to be shared from the warehouse to that customer. Maybe a soft copy kind of thing. But then 0.4 million PODs in a year. And then how to share it? So automation, yeah, because that is the only answer. What we did is we used RPA, and we started uploading those PODs into SAP. Now we were doing it manually. So manually doing it at all the across 30 locations and these many PODs. It is human, I mean, it's a huge task. So every month on month, person has to sit and then scan it and then upload it. So with the use of RPA, we just did it, I mean, with the half of the headcount. And then for approval of this, that I want to do this with the help of RPA, there is some cost attached to it. So management has approved, okay, if you're bringing down the headcount and using that headcount for the productivity improvement, then this particular project would be approved. So I'm looking at it from not from the cost or from the revenue, but from the productivity improvement, in which my objective of having the data secured and available and transparent, because see, transparent means anybody can see that POD from any place across India, because it is in system. Otherwise, somebody needs to scan it and then send it via WhatsApp or by email to that particular sales colleague, then he will show it to customer. So that time is also reduced. So it is basically a productivity improvement for everybody in the company. And I mean, Ajit, I'm looking at it from this point.
Absolutely.
So from
but
this point
even
of
the
view.
same point, example which we given, although you're looking from the headcount perspective or the reducing error, I will look at from a different perspective of a cash flow. Because you could able to send PODs on time, you can able to collect cash faster. I think that the interest cost, if you consider, that will be much, much higher than the headcount. Because normally the challenge what we see, that we always see from the cost side. And that is the time 90% of the automation approval fail, because you have a limitation how much you can work on the cost. I think the important is about what kind of opportunity in terms financially you're unleashing. It may be revenue, it may be cash flow, it may be market share. I think those terminology is more better in the boardroom to get sell this kind of a project.
Yeah. I think that could be the chupa agenda. वो logistics को दिखाने का नहीं था. And logistics is only looking at the productivity improvement and then आप करते जाओ. So maybe that could be a kind of thing. But yeah, we had successfully done that.
So thanks for sharing
Thank you.
your
Thanks,
example.
Ajit.
Yes,
Just
Venki.
to add a thought in this is not just about the cash flow and the headcount or the revenue or everything, but also the how customer satisfaction and the faster delivery. Maybe I'll give you a class example how this control tower can really enable you to reach a customer faster and make a customer happy. So we developed a control tower in which we integrated all our dealer distributor. Okay, so I have a visibility which dealers has what stock in what point of time. And just imagine we implemented the web portal in which customer can buy directly from company, not the go to dealer distributor. Most company prefer to get directed service by the brand. So customer placed order in somewhere Gangtok for one refrigerator. Just imagine it. And I have to ship from Mumbai all the way, or Kolkata. But imagine you have access a control tower in which you know that, oh, you have a distributor which is there in the Gangtok or the Guwahati, whom you have already connection, and you have access, and my system is designed such a way I can borrow a unit from that distributor and credit note, debit note settle in background because system designed such a way, and then you deliver next day to the customer,
Absolutely.
to the Gangtok. Just imagine the satisfaction of the customer and the delivery, right? So this enable you to really not just address one cost or the headcount or something. This really takes us end-to-end supply chain.
And that's the reason I think I'm now getting that word again and again. The how you design the supply chain, you are enabling to make the more revenue, get a more market share. Of course, cost is a component to improve the profitability, but we should not restrict supply chain professional toward the cost only. That is what my thought process. Yeah, Venki?
So I have been on both sides. I worked at ITC Limited and I was driving the lot of automation programs, and I was never successful. It was always shot down, and for some reason we used to develop cold feet. And later on, when I started working with customers, I realized that all my calculations were incorrect. It was primarily again looking at cost as a primary sort of objective, and not really looking at the end-to-end aspect. Now, but having worked and seen many customers after that, I would like to sort of classify the whole ROI discussion in 4 types of different customers I would like to put. The first, I call it trailblazers. So trailblazer customers are the customers who primarily believe in technology, like deep introduction of technology ahead of time. And we had some colleagues here from Asian Paints, we have Unilever, Procter & Gamble, many such companies I've worked with or seen very closely. They just believe in the power of technology being ahead of time. And it pays back. They have seen over a period of time that it pays back significantly. So that's the one trailblazer. They have different way of looking at things. If it is bringing speed and top line or all of that, so they look at a broad set of metrics and long-term perspective and not just a short-term sort of ROI. Is something that one type of customer. Second is the customer who can premiumize. This is again a very interesting discussion with one of the customers that I had. He was running, so they have a air compressor business and they do a good amount of export from India. And they set up extremely advanced warehouse. Everything is automated. And I looked at the whole capacity and I said the whole work that you have until 2028 that your projections can be done in just 4 hours. Why do you have so much of investment in automation? And the chairman turned around and said that I can premiumize the product and my ROI is literally 3 months. That's the statement that he had. So this is another way to look at it, right? Very interesting perspective. You can premiumize your product. So customer will come here, see you saw this advanced facility, you can charge premium. And then not only that, it's a moat for you compared to any other supplier. The third set of customers, I would classify them is primarily they have a problem statement at hand, whether of speed or number of orders that they have to service. That cannot be done with any amount of manual intervention or mechanized systems. For example, it's like you have a 1 cubic meter of gold. No amount of people can move that because you will not have the surface area to sort of have so many people. So this is a very similar problem where you are doing because you have to do. So e-commerce companies typically, or the companies who are parcel companies who are driving a very large number of orders, simply it's not possible to have manual or mechanized processes to do that. So they are the one, have to invest in automation and work on these different aspects of their processes to just match the expectations of the customers. And then you have the fourth type of customers who are primarily looking at the debottlenecking. So debottlenecking of either the facility itself, like for example, you are in a facility, you want to enhance the life of facility, then you want to do some investments like primarily in the storage space, etc. Or you process debottlenecking. So for example, you have a large sorting process, you want to debottleneck the sorting process, etc. And then that's the other one. So primarily if I look at customers, I was just thinking about it, I can bucket in these four different buckets. Now coming to the calculation, right? So most of us, even just the cost aspect, most of us get wrong. And I've seen this very closely because I've run operations myself and also on the other side. Most of us calculate the cost of manpower. I just heard earlier also that cost of manpower is very low in India, but that's not at all true. I'll tell you the maths is very wrong there. Most of us calculate say 20 or 25,000 as the manpower, but the real cost of manpower in India also, I'm saying the ground associate who is working, helper sort of profile also, the real cost is 35 to 40,000. And how it is? First, you have the hiring cost, right? There is some hiring cost associated. Then you have the 25,000, probably the salary. You have very high churn, so you have to replace the person. Probably you have to, there 10, 20%, you have to keep additional capacity just to manage your business. And then the person, when new person comes, the first 15 days, in a very simple environment also, first 15 days, the productivity is very low. So there is another buffer that you need to create to manage all of this. Putting all this together, the 25,000 cost is at the very minimum 35 to 40,000. The real cost is that. So when you calculate ROI, if you just take the 40,000, a lot of things start making sense just like that. Right, so that's the one. And then the other aspects that my colleagues have talked about, like looking at the lost sales, the opportunity cost, the error rates itself. Like, many of the industries that we work with, if you have a return, you have lost all your margin. For example, consumer products companies. The moment customer has a return, retailer has a return, everybody in the chain has lost margin because the cost of bringing it back and keeping itself is like more than margin, right? So you don't want all of that. The cost of all that is very significantly higher than the cost of what you will have, in the automation the cost it will take to sort of do that. So yeah, these are the aspects that one should look at when looking at the ROI, which many times we miss. And many places that I have seen, the calculation is pretty much in the cost, how much cost I can save, how many labor I can cut, and so on and so forth. But there are many more angles where automation can bring value, and all of that have to be factored in the sort of calculation.
Yeah, thanks, Venki. I think that sometimes this question, and I was just thinking that whether it's a reducing cost or increasing revenue, sometimes it's a question of existence itself. If you don't do this, you will be out of market. If your competitor is doing, let's say, 10 minutes delivery, and if you are sticking to the cost and all discussion in the boardroom and you are doing in 15 minutes, you are out of the market. I think we are in that competitive age now when we supply chain, is that no more cost or no more revenue, but it is about the existence of the organization. As she was saying that he's not visited maybe bank for even opening account. Let's say tomorrow I open a bank and I say, no, I don't want to implement the automation, and because it's a very expensive, and maybe you want the customer to come and take a token the way my dad is doing till today, because he's enjoying visiting banks till today, because he has a lot of time. I think it is that nobody possibly will go in that bank. So when it comes to the supply chain or most of the organization, it is not a choice now. It is now only thing you have to choose a right automation tool or robotic tool or methodology or a partner for the implementation. That is the only choice. So I think this is what we are now trying to conclude. But then, Mahida, you are from that industry, so I like to understand more from you.
No, I think what you're saying is absolutely true. I think as I was hearing to some of the examples from my fellow colleagues, I was just thinking, how can we, I think the primarily comparison comes in where you're having an automation at a operations level and you're trying to compare it with revenue or cost or various other financial metrics. I think what is more important is to try and convert it into some of operational metrics or sub-metrics, and then link them back to what is the impact from a cost perspective. For example, I think one of the examples which Satish was saying is in terms of how his worker used to work for almost 7.5 miles in a day, right? Now this all is the time or the number of shipments that used to be processed per day, correct? And today with all the automation technologies that we have, right, I think the number of shipments processed is increasing. Now the question is, am I then reducing the number of manpower? It can also be flipped to the other side by looking at what is the increased number of shipments that I'm handling, right? For example, earlier 1,000 square foot warehouse with all this slow manufacturing process or lower productivity used to handle say 1,000 shipments. Today the same 1,000 square foot warehouse could essentially handle 2,500 or 3,000 shipments, right? You're also increasing your revenue. You're also reducing any other additional capex investment that is required, right? I think converting those kind of operational metrics and then putting them back to a financial world will make it easier. I think even the example which Srini was calling out, today no more people visit banks. That's absolutely true. And then flip it like this: the number of employees that I have versus the number of accounts that I'm opening, right? What is my average number of accounts per employee? As long as I'm able to increase that count, which essentially means that with the same amount of people, I'm able to increase my revenue. My productivity is going up. I'm not looking at reducing the number of people, but proactively if I look at it, maybe with the earlier productivity, I would have required almost 1.5 times of my workforce. That's, I think, that's the flip that we also need to do as supply chain consultants in terms of how some of these operational activities should be converted into operational metrics and then subsequently get it tied to the operations or the finance cost or the revenue perspective.
Thanks. I think another word which is coming in my mind is about the customer experience, because that is not related to revenue, that not related to cost, maybe not related to existence, but then creating different value proposition for the customer. How customer you are dealing with, let's say taking as a bank example, that you are dealing with bank A and bank B and bank C, or maybe any product A or B or C. How exactly you are treated, how the whole experience of purchasing that product or the service, that makes a lot of difference, because now we are not into that stage where now the product is a necessity. Sometimes the product, most of the time, 90% not necessity. Because of creating experience, you are buying it. Whenever there is a sale, how many people really buy because you really want it? Sometimes you just get it because you just get a good feel about it, and maybe the Pepe jeans, Satish can talk about it more than me, but it's a very, very, very customized thing. But then point is, it's about creating experience that you ask for something, they said very quickly, 1 second that, oh, it's available. Nowadays, something size is not available, they can tell you exactly within 15 minutes we can bring in. It is you pamper your customer with lot of different approaches. I think that is what the technology is now playing role now, more than the typical cost and revenue and EBIT kind of a calculation. So we were supposed to get another question also, but then the time limit is about 5:15, and we have only 10 minutes left. So I think the important is that instead of having just a talk and bombarding from this side, I think there are a lot of experts of supply chain and the students as well in the audience. So I'd like to understand, maybe if you have any comment, any view, any query, any questions, I think I welcome that, because I need to give justice to the both side of the audience here. Yeah. In a yellow t-shirt.
Hello. Yeah, first of all, good evening.
Please, you stand, you say your name, your organization, and then the question, please.
Great, yeah. I am Tamil from Ashok Leyland. I work for Ashok Leyland for last 12 years. I am from Sourcing and Supply Chain Department. I would like to thank CII and the entire team for gathering here today for the wonderful session, and also for the knowledge sharing of each and every individual faculties. It's good to have. I would like to touch upon 2 points. The first one is, sir, that Bud sir told about that RPA, robotic process automation. Really, it is a very good tool for in automation and robotic process. But you people are spoke of with respect to benefits in cash flow and revenue or other quantified metrics. But I would see that from personally, I could relate with respect to improving the supplier satisfactions. For example, supplier are sending the material to Ashok Leyland or wherever the customers are there. After that, they have to send the original for buyer copy physically to our centralized payables team. Nowadays, they are just uploading in a software called any of the software, the True Copy or whatever, etc. Then we could able to extract the data from that software by three-way checking. Then immediately, as per the credit terms, we are paying the amount to suppliers. So without disturbance, we are making a payment to suppliers without any hurdles. Or earlier, before this process, supplier representative used to visit the customer places and discuss with the financial team, finance team for getting the payment. Also, they have to wait for that particular time for meeting the finance person. Also, that person has to be explaining of all the details which is raised by that financial person, finance team. So those complete manual activities completely eliminated today. So I would say that this is one of the best tool for improving the supplier satisfaction. Also, I could bring this under the value and trust. And I used to recall my mentor's feedback with respect to relationship. Relationship is something very, very, very critical in India. That too, if you could able to maintain an emotional connect, then suppliers will do anything for the OEMs, for whichever they required, they will put extra effort. Then only that incremental or the delta will improve for towards increment of that even supplier as well as customer as well as for the society as overall in India. This is first one. Then second one, Srinivas sir, I think you touched upon that every 4% improvement in OTF will lead to 1% improvement of growth or revenue or whatever it is. Maybe if you can touch upon something with the examples, it makes sense for me to understand. Thank you.
Okay. So, when in the initial 25 years, I used to work for consumer industry. Okay. So the metrics which we were measuring is, so the typical sale was going from our C&F to the distributor going to the retailer, and retailer then going to the customer, which is basically end consumer. Okay. Now, and we were in the business of manufacturing soap, shampoos, etc. If the Lux Pink is not there, then he would give Lux White or whatever it is. If the person doesn't want only a pink soap, then the person will buy a Santur pink soap or something of that sort. Only 1 out of the 4, 3 out of the 4 are actually people who will actually look for something else, but the remaining portion. So what happens is at the end of the day, when we were originally measuring what was going from our C&F to distributor, later on we started measuring what is actually happening at the customer end, which means at the retailer end. So what is the metric which we were doing? It's called OSA, on-shelf availability, for that particular thing. So maybe not as much applicable for an OEM supplying to you guys, but OEM supplying to you guys was the first example which you gave. Yeah. But what ultimately, if Ashok Leyland trucks are available after 6 months, then the sales will not happen. People will go for actually buying Tata trucks and Mahindra trucks and others. Okay. So what I'm saying is that if the truck is not available and if somebody wants to go and buy a truck, they will not wait for a very long duration period. So that is what I call as actually a customer service improvement of 4% gives you 1% increase in revenue. That is what I meant. I hope I have answered your question. Thank you.
Again, when you are saying about this, maybe the few months of delay in satisfying the customer. I think the new technology is that instead of capturing the thinking process of the customer, so now all the AIs are set such a way that based on your buying pattern, they can able to estimate that when you possibly buy a pink soap next, and then that pink soap is available near to your residence, so the delivery can be happening faster. So I think, and that's the beauty of the whole automation which we're talking about, which is going beyond what we've done in last 50 years or 30 years or precisely last 10 years. Now in last 10, 20 years, supply chain really gone very different way, and we all experiencing that in our experience. But now it is a very, very different level. It is not about the physical flow. It is about the how we can able to create the experience to the customer before he thinks that product is available. I think it is going to that level. And since I have worked now for 20 years with all MNC in India and overseas, and I can tell this with lot of data, that lot of things now available in India which are much better than US and Europe. So it is not that we have to always take the case studies of the Europe and USA, which we done in our MBAs and everything. Now there are a lot of case studies are available in India, in our organization itself. We are doing fantastic job. So those are not that far that after 5 to 10 years, people will come and see our warehouses and our systems and our transportation and possibly copy in their particular area. Because the competition, especially for retail, is so immense. We are doing very, very different innovative things to really get that customer.
So, how many of you have shopped at Trent anytime now? At Trent. Yeah. So, if you see, Trent is, the stock market prices have gone up tremendously. They have had a fabulous year. Even in periods where many of the apparel companies were not able to perform well, Trent has been an outlier always. And they have always been able to grow significantly. Now, the main thing about Trent is that they produce and distribute products to the store every month. Most of the apparel companies do season planning and then distribute products on a seasonal basis, once in 6 months. So the point that you were saying is basically if you are able to reduce the time from idea to market, if you are able to reduce the time, customers are willing to reward you for it. If you are able to keep costs low, customer will reward for it. Both are important. It's not that one is more important than the other, but Trent has taken a route where they are kind of hitting two birds with one stone. So basically, they are hitting the cost lever also. They are also delivering very quickly new fashions very quickly to the market. I think that's been one of the very, very positive studies that we have right now in the market.
So you are saying Trent as a case study will be taught in the business schools instead of Zara? Yeah? No, that's a good one. Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah, I think Trent has built on top of the Zara model and Indianized it and made it relevant for India. But those are the kind of innovations that really should. If you look at ROI of it, now it is maybe 1,000,000%. God only knows, because there's not much of a new investment that has come. It's about technology. It's about knowing what your customer wants and being able to satisfy that need. I think that's the biggest learning there.
And I do tend to agree that, a lot of innovation which is happening in India is not there anywhere else in the world. Yeah. And some of it is relevant for India, some of it is not. For example, you take of e-commerce, cash on delivery was an innovation which actually India invented, which slowly it is going out of the way. That's a different story, because the trust levels in the country are going up. But another thing, this 10-minute delivery, etc., which we are talking about, is very, very unique to India, by the way. It doesn't exist in the United States. I go there every 4 months, every 3 months, I know that. They are, unke liye Delhi dur hai for the 10-minute delivery. Let me make it very clear, yeah? So what you're saying is very right. There's a lot of things which are happening which are very cool in India. You don't need to look outside for that.
Absolutely.
I'll just add on to that point which Srini was saying. I think especially on the 10-minute delivery, right? I think fundamentally what Ajit was also calling out, right? I think some of the innovations where we are doing it cheap also. For example, there is a similar service called Uber Eats in US, but it was never able to really establish. I mean, it was still at a Swiggy level, right? Or Swiggy or Zomato level. I'm not coming to the 10-minute delivery. I think the cost for some reason of doing it there was still so high and prohibitive that the customers are still not adopting. Look at the 10-minute delivery in our India. I think unless it's a very low order, and people, in fact, are happy to pay the price, I mean, compared to the diesel cost or the petrol cost that would incur for them, or more importantly, the time cost. I think that's where India is truly innovating in terms of how cost is also an important factor when you're bringing this entire effectiveness or efficiency in the service.
Sure. So one last question. Yes, I can see a hand on the last. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rishabh Roy. I'm from TCI Supply Chain Solutions. And it's been a quite insightful evening today, having such a pleasure invitation from all of you and the thoughts you have shared. So my question is regarding the warehousing sector. As I am also heading a warehousing sector, so today we are handling manpowers based warehousing. So how can it be replaced by automation that we are talking about? My point is regarding the manpower can be replaced by another vendor manpower in today's scenario. If one vendor is not capable of giving the manpower, the second vendor stand up and gives the manpower and our production line doesn't stops. So is it same in the automation sector as well? If a similar line of automation gets defected or there is a downtime in certain, like we say, there is an investment in the robotic sector. If that comes down, we have to change it with the other, replace it with the other, with the same investment, or there we have to implement any team to handle that downtime in a real quick way. So one major point is that I want to understand on this.
Yeah, something is related to warehousing, so maybe possibly I can able to answer. I have not understood the question very clearly, but whatever I understood, you talked about the warehousing, manpower replacement, and the automation replacement. So
my question is, today we are handling on the manpower, that picking, packing and everything is done by manpower itself. So there are multiple vendors, suppliers, or that can provide us with the manpower replacement. If a certain level of manpower can get dehired or attrition is there, that can be replaced by another manpower agency. So there is a downtime of networking sector, and there in the past few months. So can it be affected in automation sector as well, and the production line can be affected on that?
Okay, so you are talking about two things. One thing you mentioned about the warehousing, and you give an example that if you don't get the availability of people from one service provider, you are shifting to another service provider. So you always have a plan A, plan B. A similar thing can be done by the automation. That is what the question is. My assessment okay? So I think this is an automation replacement question. Now, basis of whatever I'll know a little bit about the warehousing automation, because you are from that industry. So automation normally you do with having specific expectation at the end of the day. So with this automation, either you will reduce your manpower cost, or maybe response to your customer, or maybe the way you mentioned that how many kilometers that person is traveling, or maybe it is about the visibility. So there may be many different parameters are there. So that is number one. And with that, you have a business case and you select a service provider. And there are two types of service provider. One is service provider you implement, and one service provider you give the system, or sometimes these both service providers are same. It is, I have not seen, at least in my experience, and maybe the experts can possibly share, that if one automation is failing, other automation can replace that quickly. I think that doesn't normally happen. It takes a lot of time, first to even implement the first automation itself. So it is not like a plan A, plan B, that's number one. However, if you decide that your production line, if you have to use the word production line, the cost of stoppage of production is substantially high, then maybe you can possibly implement 2 automation systems, and if doesn't one work, then maybe another you can move. If the automation cost and the production stop lineage cost, you need to compare and we need to come up with. But I not seen and not implemented 2 systems for the same reason, because it doesn't justify. I think you have to choose right software and the service provider for the implementation. Okay?
Maybe a few classic example I can share with you, but this will not fit everything to every industry, depending on the product, depending on the industry. But few of the automation I can share, which is very relevant to even in our scenario, we implemented to avoid the accident in the warehouse, because we had a massive warehouse where we had let's take, we call it a MHE. At a time, there is more than 55 MHE operating in the warehouse. And there is always risk. If someone is coming from back or reversing, he can hit someone, the person, or to the maybe the racking system or something. So we implemented an automated system where any person who is moving or going around the warehouse, he has an ID card, he's wearing ID card, and there's a magnetic chip. And if any MH is coming in 3 meters closer to him, automatically there's a buzz alarm. He can feel the buzz in the chest. Oh, something is coming. So there's alert. 1. Second, automatically break down the speed from 50%. Let's say it's operating at 8 or 10 kilometer speed, automatically come down to 4-5 kilometer speed per hour, right? So that is 1. If someone is coming just 1 meter closer to him, automatic breakdown. So we can 100% avoid accident, human accident. Second, we had a similar chip installed in all corners and the racks. So if this particular MH is coming to corners or racks, automatic breakdown. So we could avoid 100% accident. So this one automation we implemented. Second automation was the daily cycle count, right? It's a daily big pain or sometimes accuracy or the trust about the employee who does this daily cycle count. We implemented drone-driven cycle count, where we define the ground zero. And then you define the layout, feed in the warehouse, and all our products are barcode scanned. Drone goes line-wise, bin-wise, scans, and count this, and gives facts to the system. You reduce those head counts and 100% accuracy. So these are the few of that. I have many examples. In interest of time, I will not go line item wise, but if someone has really great interest, we can connect offline. But there are a few classic examples which can be done in the warehouses.
Sure, sir.
Thanks again. I think these are the good examples. Yeah. And I think given the choice, I think I like to see and possibly replicate in most of the warehouses, I think.
So I want to add one example. We have handled Unilever warehouse in Delhi, New Delhi, and
can you be a little louder, please?
We have handled Unilever warehouse, and they have implemented robotics in Lakme industry. So they have initially they have working it for 2 years, and then they have dropped down to then back to the manpower based manhead. So can we have an insight on that if he fails and come back to manpower because that have not worked in that particular sector? This is I'm talking about in 2016. Unilever has introduced the robotics picking and packing in a particular separate environment.
So again, this is a very specific question. In 2016, we are managing Unilever today, and it's a very seamless now. So those problems are not there now today.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so with this now, I think it's almost 5:30. I think you need to know that from anybody leaving from here going to take 2 hours to reach to the city center of the city. So in the interest of time, I like to conclude this session. I myself enjoyed this interaction, and I learned a lot of things from people who are on the dais as well as on the in the audience. But then we are here for maybe another 10-15 minutes after this panel discussion. If anybody has any question, any suggestion, want to meet, we are available. Thank you very much, and have a safe travel back to your home. Thank you.
Thank you very much.